Now, in a moment, we'll be hearing from Newsnight's Michael Crick, but first our reporter Julie Peacock has been watching as the battle lines are drawn in Glasgow East.
At last, Labour finally decide on a candidate.
I am honoured to be nominated to fight this seat for the Labour Party in the East End of Glasgow. It is a great privilege. Councillor Mason came into politics for one reason only, to break up the United Kingdom. I came into politics for a fundamentally different reason, to tackle poverty and to stand up for the people of the East End of Glasgow.
But Margaret Curran's being branded a fifth-choice Labour candidate by opponents. The man expected to win the nomination the first time round, Councillor George Ryan, failed to turn up at the initial selection meeting last Friday. It's thought Stephen Purcell was next on the list, but turned it down. Attention then turned to former party General Secretary Leslie Quinn and the Shettleston MSP Frank McAveety. Both declined. And now it falls on Margaret Curran to reverse the fortunes of Labour nationally and win the Glasgow East by-election. This was once considered one of Labour's safest seats, but the SNP is ready to cash in on Labour's unpopularity in the polls.
Normally speaking, this is a safe Labour seat if it was a normal general election with competition all around the country. But by-elections are special, and we've shown that in the past. And there are special circumstances here. We have the first popular SNP government. We have an exceptionally unpopular Labour government in Westminster. We have Scottish Labour in turmoil with no leader, couldn't find a candidate for this area. So there are exceptional circumstances and it's a challenge, but we're up for it.
Most of the parties concede, though, that even in this climate, they'll have their work cut out, reversing Labour's 13,500 majority in Glasgow East. And as if Labour needs reminding of the national importance of this by-election, the Conservative leader David Cameron came up to Glasgow to put the boot into Gordon Brown and position himself as the country's leader in waiting.
When you look at the Labour Party situation, you know, no leader in Scotland, no candidate in the by-election, a Prime Minister who won't visit the constituency, it does seem completely rudderless, leaderless and shambolic.
This may not be traditional Tory territory, but Cameron's intended audience stretched further than the East End of Glasgow.
I don't want to come here to Glasgow to make out that this is somehow a uniquely damaged community. It's a community that's been damaged, all right, but the cause of that damage is wreaking havoc, not just here, but everywhere. That's why we've got to learn the lessons properly, and that's what I want to do today. This is the broken society by-election.
But however the politicians want to brand it, it's certainly not going to be a comfortable by-election campaign for Labour or Gordon Brown.
Now, as you may have seen earlier, Newsnight's political editor Michael Crick has spent the day in Glasgow East. He's with us live now. Is this by-election really going to decide Gordon Brown's political future?
Well, certainly there are a lot of people who think that. I have to say I'm not 100% convinced that is the case, but certainly other commentators are saying that, and quite a lot of Labour MPs. And clearly if Labour were to lose in Glasgow East, that would certainly fuel those Labour MPs who are calling for a change. I think there are a number of obstacles between a defeat for Labour in Glasgow East and that actually happening. The mechanism for getting rid of Gordon Brown is very difficult. He would have to be effectively persuaded to step down. I think a second advantage for Mr Brown, which he's had all along, is that there is no obvious alternative to him. It's not like the days when he was challenging Tony Blair or the days of Michael Heseltine, where people can say, well, if only so-and-so was leading the Labour Party, it would transform their fortunes. That isn't really the case with David Miliband or Alan Johnson or any of the other alternatives. And third, there would be this question, I think, if Labour was to get rid of its leader, or change its leader, rather, for the second time in this Parliament, the pressure to hold an immediate general election would be that much greater. And, of course, in those circumstances, even with a new leader, I'm not sure that Labour could win an election.
Well, at least Gordon Brown has a candidate now in Margaret Curran, selected 46 votes to 2. What have you made of Labour Party Democracy in Action in Glasgow East?
Well, it was interesting actually being out with the Labour canvassers this afternoon. They were actually, some of them were already talking on the doorsteps as if Margaret Curran had been chosen as the candidate, which I'd not experienced before. And of course we saw last Friday when the candidate had, George Ryan had to step down. Well, then the meeting got postponed. Well, normally in those circumstances you just choose between the remaining candidates, but instead they postponed it till tonight. And then that vote of 46 votes to 2, I don't recall such an overwhelming majority for any selection in any party in the time I've been studying these things. But maybe it's because local party members rallied round. They saw that Margaret Curran clearly was going to be the candidate. They're under a lot of pressure and they needed to express unity in those circumstances.
And briefly, the mood on the ground as far as you could tell?
Well, it's difficult to say after only a few hours. I have to say, meeting that shopkeeper today, I've never known somebody who was actually a member of a party publicly telling people to vote for another one. Although there was a lot of people undecided, a lot of this will depend on turnout and how much, I think, the SNP can squeeze what remains of the Tory and Lib Dem vote. OK,
Michael Crick, no doubt you'll follow the by-election closely. Thanks very much indeed. And let's take a look at tomorrow's front pages, starting with the Scotsman. It goes with a picture of the sister-in-law of Corporal Sarah Bryant, the first female soldier killed in Afghanistan. It leads on the G8 summit in Japan. That's just about your lot from me and for Newsnight Scotland for tonight. All the news on the by-election, of course, including a full list of candidates as they emerge on the BBC website. And if you want to see this programme again, it's on the BBC iPlayer. Good Morning Scotland's on air from 6. Night-night.